Today's sermon is titled Pushing Through the Impossible, to be delivered by Kelly Lemon. Kelly is an inspirational speaker, a Pacific Northwest-based one-armed wedding photographer and portrait photographer, adventure seeker, and chocolate chip cookie connoisseur. Over the last 11 years in the industry, her wedding and empowerment photographs have been published in E! News, Style Me Pretty, The Knot Magazine, 100 Layer Cake, and Seattle Bride Magazine. Kelly has overcome the stigma that photography is only for two-armed, able-bodied people. When she was 12, she survived a near-fatal car accident that paralyzed a quarter of her body, predominantly her right arm. She has continued to push through the impossible, overcoming many obstacles along the way in order to pursue her dream. With the most recent obstacle due to a rare syndrome, Kelly lost the use of her only functioning arm. And so she photographed a wedding in 2018 with no functioning arms. She's thankful to have her left arm back. Inspired by the challenges she has confronted, Kelly wants to empower others to shift their mindset. She hopes to inspire you, showing how to push through the seemingly impossible by providing practical steps and sharing how to start experiencing joy in the midst of adversity. Kelly is married to her husband, Augustine, of 10 years, and they have a 2-year-old daughter, Juliana, and a mini golden doodle named Toby. Zooming in this morning from Colorado, please welcome Kelly Lemon.
Well, thank you so much for having me in that wonderful introduction. I'm really thankful to be here and to be a part of your community today. I want to start with a quote from a book called The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. Life is difficult. This is a great truth. And when we realize that this is truth, we can transcend it. Have you ever experienced a season in your life that just seemed impossible? Or a time where you just thought the trial was so difficult, you thought, how can I ever recover from this? Can I even keep going? This tension between our spiritual life and our connection to God in the midst of intense adversity is a common theme in my story. These seasons of trials have pushed me to my limits. They've revealed my weaknesses and they've tested my faith. But they've also shown that I've developed a stronger connection to joy, resilience, and ultimately deepen my faith in God. We need to learn how to live well when life is hard. For just this common example, this pandemic is not going to be our last trial that we face. I'm excited to share with you my story from my perspective with my relationship with God and my Christian faith. And I hope that no matter where you identify in your spiritual journey, that these themes will resonate with you. Okay, so the story begins July 29th, 2000. That is the day that my world crashed around me. My family was in a near fatal car accident driving across the country on a road trip. We were traveling from Michigan to Colorado. We were in Nebraska, middle of nowhere. And I had just decided to take my seatbelt off just for a moment. And in that same moment, my brother fell asleep at the wheel. So going 80 miles an hour, my car went off the guardrail, hit the guardrail, and my head went out the window. So as my head broke through the window, the frame of the car caught my shoulder, shattered my whole shoulder, and all the nerves that control that fourth of my body were snapped from the brainstem instantly. My body continued out of the car, hit the guardrail, and the car rolled over me. It's a complete miracle I'm alive and can share my story today. It definitely felt like a whirlwind. It felt like just like the movies, everything's spinning, the doctors are there, paramedics, can you feel your arm? Can you feel your toes? And it just felt like a complete whirlwind. And I remember my mom specifically, as I laid next to the guardrail, she came over to me and said, Kelly, can you move your feet? Can you move your feet? And I said, yes, but Mom, where's my arm? Where is my arm? And I just shouted to her, and I never knew that that would be the last moment that I would ever feel my right arm again. That day was a catapult for a lot of other events. I mean, I broke all these bones in my faces. I shattered my shoulder, broke this bone, punctured internal organs. And I went from being an active 12-year-old who had a really pretty normal life and never went to the hospital to being in and out of surgery, in and out of the hospital. I was placed on a Flight for Life helicopter, and they told my mom I would only make it for a few days. I pulled through and eventually had a 13-hour nerve transplant where they transplanted nerves from my legs and into my left side and grafted it to my right. So those next few years were a battle of what it's like to live life with one arm and left-handed. And let me tell you, I am not ambidextrous. That was a hard thing to learn. And so it just became surgery, physical therapy, surgery, physical therapy. And by the time we got to high school, I had somewhat developed a familiarity with life with one arm. I'd kind of gotten on my feet again. So we started kind of focusing our efforts towards the nerve pain. You see, if you have chronic illness, that's oftentimes connected to your paralysis, you many times suffer chronic nerve pain. But most people who have chronic nerve pain from paralysis, it just fades over time. And I am that rare person where my pain actually has gotten exponentially worse over time. So throughout high school, we started addressing that issue. We had multiple neck surgeries. I was in and out of a neck brace, but every single surgery failed. So by the time I got to college, I had believed the lie that healing and a day without pain was just not a part of my story. But I was thankful to just be moving on, doing life as a normal college student. But come sophomore year, you think that you'd be done with surgery for a while. And my neurologist who did my spinal nerve transplant had reached out and said, there's a new surgery that he really wants me to consider. He said, it's a brainstem surgery that would require breaking all the bones in my neck, doing a full open face surgery and full open face of my spinal cord, burning all the different nerve endings to create a scar tissue wall to create a block so that the nerve pain from my brain would no longer go into my body. There was a lot of risks. He wanted me to take 6 months off college. But he said to me, 85 to 90% of people just like you are waking up pain-free. And if you don't take this opportunity, it's on you. Definitely didn't have good bedside manner. So I was wrestling. I had done so many surgeries, and my mom, as a single mom, had paid so much money, thousands upon thousands of dollars for surgeries that failed. And I was like, can I actually ask my mom to spend another $20,000 on a surgery that probably won't work for me based on my track record? But this was an opportunity, it was a chance. So we talked about it, we prayed about it, and decided we're going to spend 6 months pursuing this decision. I asked pastors and friends and people in my community to just be praying for me in this season. We asked God to open doors and close windows and give us direction if we should do this surgery or not. And every single thing fell into place. We had free housing and all these different scheduling things that worked out perfectly. And we just every person felt so much peace that this was an opportunity worth pursuing. So I started to shift my heart to believe in hope and to believe that this could be something different. So ultimately we decided to do the surgery. And they told me the worst that's going to happen is you're going to spend a lot of money and you're going to wake up just the same as you are. That would suck, but that's the worst that's going to happen. As a result, I woke up from that surgery, and there has only been one time in my life that I have begged God to take me home and to end my life. And that was when I woke up from that surgery. I woke up learning that it failed, but also learning that I am part of the 0.1% of people who it did not actually just not do anything. It actually made it exponentially worse, and they hadn't seen that happen before. So the amount of pain that I woke up in was excruciating, and the damage was permanent. Coming out of that surgery and recovering was a journey. I was angry, I was bitter, I was frustrated. I felt like I had voluntarily walked into a surgery that was detrimental to my life. And my mom just paid another $20,000 for something that failed. So I took the next opportunity, studied abroad, get out of my space. And as I was studying abroad, this is a few months later, I started noticing with my left hand that's fully functioning, I started noticing my hand started falling asleep. And I started noticing for hours numbness. And then I started having struggling with my camera and my keys to my apartment. And I began to lose my fine motor skills. And I thought, okay, I just haven't seen a chiropractor in a few months. Once I get home, we'll get all settled. So sure enough, I get home in December and it's Christmas and I'm a snowboard instructor. And I remember I was signing the kid out at the end of the day and I put my left hand on the table to pick up the pen. And my left hand fell limp and it would not pick up the pen. And so I looked at my hand, not responding to my brain, and completely freaked out. It was all over. I don't actually know how I got home that day, like how I drove home. But when I got home, it's Christmas. So my house is full of obnoxious relatives and I am having a complete meltdown. So I run upstairs to my shower thinking it must be cold or a frostbite or something. Why is my left hand not working? So I get in the shower and I start to raise my hand to wash my hair. And as I raised my arm, my left arm fell completely limp and both my arms were just dangling beside me and I couldn't even turn off the water. And this is the point in the story where if you were a Christian, you normally would like edit this whole section out because this is my rant with God. This is when I say all the things that you probably shouldn't say as a Christian, all the doubts, all the anger, all the cussing, it was there. And so I just had this rant with God in this moment. I was like, what is going on? I feel so abandoned by you. I feel so broken and so hurt. And I just was in this season where I just felt so alone. I felt so alone. So what we learned was as a result of this surgery, it did not only triple my pain, where I had to triple my medication dosages and have a whole new level of nerve pain as a result, but it also, when they decided to screw the discs back in together on my neck, they didn't screw one of the discs in correctly. So the discs slid out and started severing and damaging nerves on the left side. So obviously, as you might imagine, I don't do surgery, so I wasn't going back in for surgery to fix it, but we realized that this was a very, very crucial time. We met with a chiropractor in Chicago and he just told me very, very clearly, he's like, Kelly, you're going to need treatment every single day because we need to get this disc off the nerve, because if we don't, one day this disc will slide out and you will lose your left and only functioning arm permanently. But of course, we submitted to insurance and they said this would be a luxury and we won't pay for anything. And as a single parent and just spending thousands on a surgery and trying to finish college, we just didn't have the capacity to add on this treatment. But Dr. Scott Selby found it in his heart to donate his services, an hour to 2 hours every single day. He donated his time for over a year and saved my left arm. In that year, it was a battle because when that time came, I would have the disc adjusted off the nerve and I would have a few hours where my hand would work, but I would never know when I would lose it. I would never know when the disc would slide out and I would lose it again. So we had to cram all my exams, all my tests, all my photography projects, all within hours that my hand would be functioning. But driving was scary. It was scary to go to a basketball game and go into the bathroom not knowing if I would like lose my hand and not be able to button my pants, or if I would have to go into the cafeteria and drop the tray and have everything on the ground and no longer be able to pick it up. And I came to this breaking point. I was in my apartment and I was unloading the dishwasher and I was just picking up a plate. And as I picked up the plate, I lost the mobility and my arm fell to the ground and the plate crashed and broken glasses everywhere and I can't pick up the pieces. And I looked down on the ground, sunk to the ground and said, this is where I'm at. And I plead with God and I said, God, I am so broken and I can't pick up the pieces. And I was just like, I need you. I need you. I can't keep going. And it was in that moment, God met me there. And God said, I have been waiting for you to share this burden. Because the thing is, I just stopped connecting to God altogether. I just cut my spiritual life off. I was going to the door, but I wasn't knocking. I was so afraid that if I knocked, that he wouldn't answer, that I'd be abandoned once again. But sharing this burden and going through this process of healing with God and understanding he was there through the trials, I began to learn how to see it differently. I learned I needed to have a prayer mindset of overcoming the tools rather than just praying for everything to go away. Because every time that I would just pray for everything to go away and at the end of the day, nothing would change, I would lose heart and lose hope. But I needed to start thinking about the tools to endure. I needed to start to pray for wisdom on how to navigate the trial, to pray for strength, to endure that whole day, and to pray for perspective, to be able to zoom out and see it from a wider perspective and wider point of view. Every single day, I began praying for these promises. And every day I experienced what it meant to have wisdom. I experienced having strength just to get one more day and experience the perspective. And I saw those prayers being answered. And over time was able to experience what it meant to also experience joy again and also experience hope. You see, I needed a mindset shift. After that time, about a year in, my left arm eventually came back fully. And things kind of settled down with my health for a few years. I got married, I moved to Seattle and started my business. And then in 2018, things took a big change. So Hannah's joining us today, and Hannah is Andy's daughter. And I was blessed to be able to photograph her wedding. And just 4 months after her wedding, my health took a big turn. Basically, what happened was I got a big pain in my neck, didn't know what was going on, went to my doctors, they couldn't figure it out. And within 3 days, lost 90% of the mobility in my left arm once again. I was driving home, my left arm fell off the wheel, and I had to use my legs to get my car to pull over because I had lost almost all my mobility in my left arm. Of course, they said it had nothing to do with my past injuries, nothing to do with my neck. I got a rare syndrome where inflammation causes muscles to suffocate nerves and cut off circulation to the brain, and it usually takes a limb, and it just happened to take the limb of my functioning arm. Thankfully, this season only lasted 4 months, but it was interesting to go through something that was so similar than what I had gone through just years prior, but this time I had the tools to overcome. I was able to push through. I was able to pray for wisdom and strength and perspective. And the joy I experienced in my marriage and in my life and in my community in that time was beautiful. And the way that my community stepped into our lives in that season was beautiful. So much of it needs to be how we shift our mindset. We need to put trials in the asset column of our lives, not the liability, not because it's fun or we want to go through it, but the value of what it produces. Trials produce endurance. Endurance to love when you feel unloved. Endurance to love people who are hard to love. Endurance to serve and be generous when we feel empty. And to know that we can keep pushing when it seems ultimately impossible. And trials require wisdom, and they develop wisdom. Because trials reveal our weakness and develop humility. And trials reveal our lack of coping resources and help us reconnect with our need for God. And when our world shatters, trials give us wisdom so we can persevere and seek a better version of ourselves. And ultimately, trials recalibrate our perspective. We can't experience deep pain without also experiencing deep joy. It allows us to feel everything more deeply, and we can find joy where others can't. When we recalibrate our perspective, we gain empathy. This is where we can deepen our sense for community. So I want to challenge and encourage you guys. So often when we are in seasons of trials, the moment that trial stops, we're in a season of peace. In that season, we're like, oh, finally, I can just like take a breath and live my life. And our focus goes inward. But when we're in a season of peace, that's when we have more capacity to love others and step into other people's lives and love boldly. That's when we can take the time to love others in incredible ways and change their lives. But how often are we taking that opportunity? How often are we looking outward to seek that opportunity? I think that we need to shift how we see community and how we share burdens with one another. One example is my doctor, my chiropractor. He was in a season of peace with capacity, and he donated his services for a year and saved my left arm. That was a miracle. One way that I feel like I've been able to give back during seasons of peace is I've been wanting to use my photography gifts to help women as they embrace their bodies. I've had my own journey with body image and how I have had scars and surgeries. And I wanted to help women with physical differences to see themselves in a strong way. And so I started doing something called empowerment photography. So in empowerment photography, you'll see this woman on the left, her chest is fully caved in, and she never felt feminine or beautiful. So that opportunity to sit with her and be raw with her and say, no, you are strong and you are powerful and you are beautiful and you are feminine. Or this other woman who was an organ transplant survivor, and she felt so weak in the hospital for years, and she wanted to feel strong. And so I was allowed to use my gifts in ways to encourage and empower women as they embrace the skin they're in the season that they're in. 'in. 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 'in Our impatience in our modern culture, they teach us to be self-focused. And if it doesn't benefit us, we're out. When we need to build relationships, we need to deepen those relationships. We just need to set the camera down. We just need to set our barriers down so we can meet people human to human, heart to heart, and meet them where they're at. I really hope that in this season, in this time, as we reflect on the season you're in, whether you're in a season of trials and you're in a season of hardship, if we can shift that perspective towards praying and seeking the tools to overcome rather than just praying for it to all go away, you'll see hope every day. Or if you're in a season of peace and you have the capacity to love boldly and to step into someone else's life and say, hey, I'm going to pray that big, scary prayer for you because it's too heavy for you to handle. Or, hey, I'm going to bring you meals because I know you're going through a hard time. And I'm actually going to step in my area of not being comfortable to help someone else in need, because that's what community is about. So I encourage you as we wrap this season and I close my story, I want to leave you with this quote. A season of adversity can teach us that life is far more beautiful and painful than we ever imagined. And when we live life on the edge of the deepest beauty and the deepest pain, our hearts, our worldview, and our community will deepen and expand. Myra Sack. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my story today.